Last week, I went to participate at the Spielenshus event, Kulturnatten, where a lot of people came to Spielenshus to check it out and see what we did there. And I had been asked to represent for role playing, which I did. And I brought some cool things. I brought quite a packet, really, rule books of a variety of sorts, all the way back to Tunnels and Trolls and Holmes D&D, and then a bunch of others, which I'd chosen kind of based on ideas. So I said, well, what if I want to talk about this kind of thing? So here, I'll bring some materials and the book. That would be a good example. So I wasn't really planning on playing games in the sense of demoing or, just playing through anything. But I brought a whole bunch of things that I could pick up and turn to a page and say, okay, so in this one, it works like this. Or, oh, well, you're asking about something, and this game would be a good example. So I brought a whole bunch of a variety of systems, obviously. So it turned into a pretty good little teaching packet, kind of better than I even had expected. I was just hopeful, and it really exceeded my hopes. A lot of people came, a lot of people to talk to, and a lot of them with interesting questions, all the way from role-playing what playing, to highly specific concerns or interests. And I found myself using just about everything I brought, which was kind of nice, and sketching little notes and stuff. Well, anyway, it was a lot of fun. And I learned a lot, and that's super important, right? It's a big deal. I mean, technically, this was teaching. And one of the most important things about teaching is when you walk away going, all right, learned a thing, new things to think about, feeling a little energized, lots of questions in my own mind, just right. So the one I want to talk about was the experience of talking to two people who came as a couple, who were recently involved in a role-playing game. I don't know if they had been recommended to come over and talk to me or not, but they certainly came with a dedicated question. They had been interested in role-playing. A friend of theirs played in a long-established, long-standing group and invited them in. So they sat down to play with, the group. The game in question was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Edition, which is a venerable text at this time. And for those of you who know it, you know that if someone has been playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd Edition for a really long time with the same group of people, then what they're playing is certain to be highly derived. Very much a set of chosen texts out of many, many to choose from, and chosen sections within those texts and notions of how they fit together, which of the published settings and campaigns and adventures are considered legit. And there's really no way to tell, frankly, what they were playing actually at the table. So anyway, they came and told me this, that they were playing in this game and that they were new to role playing. And I really didn't know what to say so much as well. That's very nice. I hope you're having a nice time. And I'm kind of looking around my table. Do they want to know more about other games? Do they want to know about the history of roleplay? I gave them the little sheet of the history of D&D as soon as they said that, and that was really, really interesting. They were like, oh, look at that. There's all these different D&Ds, and look at that one. We're doing that one. So it was kind of fun just to sort of locate yourself on a schematic like that. But it really didn't become clear to me until a little bit of dialogue went by that they had a very specific concern. And it was at this time, as I tried to articulate what I thought I was hearing, and they were saying the things that they were experiencing, that it really came together when one of them used these 3 phrases that were just bowled me over. I mean, I was like, we have got to talk about this. I get it. I see what you mean. And now we can have this conversation. And even then, I feel as though I was striking at an angle that turned out, fortunately, to be useful to them. They were very enthusiastic about it. But I knew was just one strike of a match off the surface of something pretty big and worth discussing and looking at from different angles as well. So hopefully we will begin such a thing. Okay, so what were the phrases? What were these words? They said, we don't know what is accepted. We don't know what is expected. And we don't know what is possible. "50-60 years of what is role-playing texts in the beginning of role-playing books, and I am pretty sure not a single one of them actually spits this out. And that was fantastic. That's where I was like, never put it that way in my head before. Obviously, what sensible people, curious people, willing to be engaged people need to know. Specifically, they were talking, of course, about actually role-playing what to say, especially in terms of, the most obvious sense of what my character just plain does. So nothing outrageous or subtle or difficult, just you're playing an elf and today the elf does this, or this is happening, what do you do? And you say, I do this. And what is accepted, what is expected, and what is possible. I wrote, this is the piece of paper that I actually wrote those things down upon, and continued to scribble a bit on it as we talked. Now, the sort of superficial. Now, the superficial reading of these terms, I think, and so this is the one that I'm going to say I'm throwing out. Other interrelations or Venns or whatever that you might want to build from them, that's great. But this one has to go. And that would be that the game system, the game play is basically what is possible and what is accepted are effectively the same. That the system bounds what is possible, along with other sort of common sense things like, you don't walk on air if you can't fly and stuff like that. And whatever you can say in it, which is possible, is ipso facto acceptable. And then within that, there's expected and unexpected. And though that's sort of a curiosity of no particular interest. I mean, if you say it and it's possible to do, then it will be accepted. And then inside that, if somebody was expecting you to do that, that's fine. And if they weren't expecting you to do that, well, that's fine too. I mean, that's a curiosity or an individual detail. This image of how it is and how it works and all the rest of it is kind of what they had been told, but they were swiftly finding out that it wasn't. And in particular, one of the couple told me they felt that when they kind of went with what seemed to be something fun or that was intuitive, or that they said, well, my character's standing here. We've been asked, what do you do? And I do a thing that a lot of the time it worked a little bit differently. It was not in the zone of accepted. That it was the kind of thing that a person who would be sitting at that table ordinarily wouldn't do. And that the person in charge, the DM, kind of thought and said, well, it is possible. It's not really, on, but it's possible. So we'll go ahead and play a little detour or a little subroutine or something that kind of focuses on this action. And then we'll come back around again to, what we're doing here. And very much everybody else sort of checks out or kind of just sits back and, goes into sort of courteous, I don't really want to say humoring or, patronizing. That might be a little too extreme, but definitely in sort of we will tolerate this while they learn, right? While they learn what is in the accepted zone. Never mind possible. Possible is kind of what we have to kick to if somebody does something and we don't want to put them down. So we'll just kind of go neutral here for a bit. The DM will do the whatever subroutine or, little cul-de-sac they need to do to bring this person back into the what we do that's accepted realm, and we'll move from there. So in this construction, accepted includes all the stuff you could do that everybody will say, okay, that's legit and we'll work with that. Expected would be the things that you do in there which are particularly well tuned to either what's been implied to be going on that we need to pursue, or is tactically sound, or indicates kind of a buy-in, to what we're here for, the group's, purpose. And so that's the relationship between accepted and expected. And then, as I say, possible is just what you have to go to when somebody doesn't quite get it. So I think that's the construction that they were encountering. And given that, and given that I'm not there to be a life coach, and I'm not there to, do any such thing as, well, why don't you ditch those guys and come play with the real game or anything like that? No way. No, my discussion was, all right, let's talk about how you can sort of dissect what these are for purposes of, enjoying yourself in play. Now, as I say, this is sort of the one angle I decided to strike into, not really the totality of everything we could address here. But I'll describe what it was, because through, the luck of the dice, at the moment I was able to say something that did seem to generate a lot of enthusiasm. The response and a little dialogue about it back and forth, and they were kind of going, I get it. That I can do. That I can try. That seems, has the ring of truth for me. I can go do that there. So that's good. So, what comes of it, we will see, but that's where the conversation went. So this is what I said. I suggested that we go to expected. And I said, especially because I didn't think of it, I didn't want to say expected as, do this one thing. You have to do the one thing that is expected. No, I gave some thought, and I said, look, in this game, and granted with whatever tweakings we've, that you guys have encountered at the table that are probably legion for this game, but do you guys see that in play there is this kind of algorithm at work of risk and reward? And you have your in-fiction rewards like treasure and gems and boons and, letters of writ for all I know, whatever it is. And then you have your numerical reward in terms of experience points and the ultimate effects of leveling up and, stuff like that. That those have an algorithmic relationship of some kind to do with risk, facing danger, overcoming foes, whatever it is that you get experience points for. And that this interaction is the context in which expected behavior occurs. Now, let's not be simplistic, because there are plenty of things where you could, for example, back off on a given risk. You could seek further risk. You could do some special work in regard to, jockeying toward a particular reward, or maybe different kinds of rewards are available in the fiction, and this one is more appealing to you than that one. All of those things. Oh, and that different characters can have different views about all that stuff. So I'm not talking about character consensus or player consensus. I'm talking about if you operate in a way that works with the presence of that algorithm, and you're taking a particular tack toward it, perhaps very intuitively, very much from playing my character. That's however you want to privilege your personal preference of experiencing these things, that someone could look at you doing it and understand, even if it wasn't what they expected. You're doing what? Oh, well, wow. But it's in the zone of, this is how you want to deal with this particular, algorithmic setup, however indirectly, right? It could be several layers deep, and you're not literally counting on your fingers or anything, but it's relatable in those terms. Then you have a wide range of things you could do. Your character could behave this way or that way. Your character could change in the way they behave over time, in any number of directions, and it is all in the zone of expected. That actually kind of struck a chord. Then I got to thinking, all right, let's look at these other terms. Then what we have is accepted. And this would be kind of a different issue, I think. And again, I was thinking about this particular game somewhat generically, as I don't really know what they're doing at the table. But I said, all right, tell me if this kind of jibes as well. There's a whole bunch of characters in the party or among the group, and they nodded. Yeah, there's all sorts of characters. So, okay. Well, in a game which has these high risk factors, in the moment, there's often a necessary processing of individual safety or goals relative to the collective safety or goals. So your character is in this situation because they want a thing, perhaps. And some groups, the emergent property of, well, we all have to work together in order to get our separate things is pretty far over on that end. We're thrown together and we have to be together, you bozos, because I want my thing. And I guess I'll, stick it out for your thing once in a while, but, I got to remember why I'm here. All the way to, we all want a thing, and we may have personal spins on it a little bit, but the collective goal really is kind of the topper here. And there's a huge spectrum in between, and certainly characters can shift around on it too. They were with me on this, and so comfortable that I was speaking in some relevance to their game, I said that one of the things that's acceptable is for you to make your decisions about where you're going to lean on that variable in any dangerous situation. And that although a given person at the table would really like it if your character was more helpful toward theirs, or maybe that person at the table is, well, whatever expectations they may have, they've sort of said those expectations go on the shelf, because as far as that variable is concerned, whatever you do is accepted. We understand that everybody is going to be leaning around in different ways about this. And so it's not really expected behavior so much as, well, whatever you do, that's acceptable. We get that. So I said, let's, think about it in these terms. Expected in terms of operational game mechanics and fictional entities. accepted in terms of a more social or general or interactive aspect of your character and the group. And that goes for all the individuals in it. And then possible then becomes a subset of all of those in terms of success and failure, in terms of the feasibility of doing a thing in a given moment. But possible kind of has had its its scary aspect taken away in this context. You're able to operate and shift your behavior in terms of expected. You're able to operate and shift your behavior in terms of accepted. And then possible, as it turns out, is kind of the handmaiden now to those things. Perhaps putting up a barrier at some point. Okay, look, that sounds great, but no. Or, wow, doing that? Well, that is possible, but it's in context. It's not in the abstract sense of possible. And it's not kicking out into the zone away from accepted and expected to sort of grudgingly admit that since that's possible, I guess we got to cope with it. That's where I ended up in the conversation. And it was, as I say, reasonably positive. Hope best wishes to everyone involved. But I walked away with my piece of paper and thinking, I have got to bring this up. Something about the nature of those phrasings coming straight raw from the dialogue of people articulating their experiences with play, almost supernaturally appropriate in terms of which exact game and what sort of group we're talking about, that I just can't resist. I'm sharing it here, and I want your thoughts and your ven for those things and what they mean, and how it applies with your experience as opposed to theirs, all sorts of things. Let's do that.